Hello everyone. In this video we will be covering trigger pull and follow through. This is one of the hardest but most important parts of shooting, especially for pistols because the trigger pull has the greatest chance of moving your gun off target. First, let's go over where to put your finger. Take your dominant hand and find the first joint on your index finger. You want to put the trigger anywhere between 1/3 and halfway between the joint and tip of your finger. Remember, every one and every gun will be slightly different, so you may have to try a few things out until you find what works best for you and the gun you are using. Now, making sure the gun is unloaded. The most important thing to keep in mind is you don't want to be using too much or too little finger on the trigger. With too little finger on the trigger, you'll be pushing the gun away from your hand, and with too much, you'll be pulling it down and towards your hand. Next, when you pull the trigger, you want to be pulling back as slowly as possible. You want to pull the trigger straight back so that you aren't moving the gun at all during trigger pull, and ideally, every shot should surprise you. This will stop you from flinching and moving the gun before firing. After firing the gun, it is important that you follow through on the shot. In shooting, follow through means not jerking your finger off the trigger and keeping good sight alignment, sight picture, and maintaining your breathing. When you begin shooting, a good way to make sure you aren't jumping off the trigger is to over-exaggerate by keeping the trigger locked to the rear for a second or two after the shot, and then slowly easing off until you feel the gun reset. I'll demonstrate that here. Remember, this weapon is unloaded and pointed in a safe direction. Slowly pulling the trigger to the rear until you feel it break. There. And now you can see I'm keeping the trigger locked to the rear. Now, normally when you're shooting, the slide would cycle because of the force of the bullet, but here, because it's unloaded, I'll have to do that manually. Now, I'm going to slowly ease off of the trigger until it resets. You'll actually be able to hear that here. That click right there was the trigger resetting. Now, I'm ready to fire again.